Hi guys, my name is Lydia and welcome to Lily Wins Creative channel. So in this tutorials, I'm going to be showing on how I made this lovely off the shoulder padded bustier cut. From the cutting to the sewing and to the finishing. As you can see, it's looking so lovely on me. Well finished. So guys, if you want to achieve exactly what I'm wearing, like you want to get it perfectly the way I get it, without any amendment after finishing your work, follow exactly anything you see me do in the tutorials. Please do it exactly the way I do it. And I promise you, this is what you will achieve exactly. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and please don't forget to subscribe. Subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up, like and share. In my next video, I'll be showing on how to cut a princess cut. And I'm also going to be doing the sewing aspect of it. Have fun! If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel, like and also comment. So please, let's get started. So guys, since it's an off the shoulder, I'm going to be minusing 4 from the shoulder. Like, I'm going to place my tape like this. This is 4, it's out of the fabric. So I'm going to now mark out my half length, which is 18, and I'm going to be adding 1 more inch to it, 19. Connect it and then cut it out. This is what I'll be needing for my work. So now I'm going to be inserting my bust point into it. So take note, since I minus 4 from my measurement, it's going to be like that, constant. So it's going to be, so this is now minus 4. My bust point is 10.5, so I'm marking 10.5 like this. And then my under bust point is 14. I'm marking 14. And then my half length is 18. I'm also marking 18. Connect all the marks like this and like this. This is the bust point. This is the under bust point. And this is the waist. My nipple to nipple measurement is 9. So 9 divided by 2 is 4.5. 4.5 plus half inch is 5. So I'm marking out those 5 on the bust line like this. I'm also marking out the same 5-inch, and I now mark a straight line to connect my point. So this line is my bust point line. So I'm going to come to the under bust. This is the under bust line. I'll place my tape at the line, at the bust point line, and mark 1 inch here. I'm going to do the same thing to the waistline, placing my tape on this line and marking out 1 inch as well. So on the other side, I'm going to place my tape on the under bust line and I'm marking out 1.5 inch here. I'm doing the same thing to the waist as well, marking out 1.5 inch on this line on the waist. After I'm done marking out my point, I'm going to go ahead to connect this point to this point like this. And then I'm going to connect this point here to this bust point with a curve. I will use a free hand to do that. I'm also going to this line to do the same thing. I'll connect this to this like this. And then I'll connect this to this as well with a curve. I'll use free hand for that. You can do that. You can use your free hand. After I'm done with that, I'm going to place my tape on the beginning here. Mark out 3.5 inch. It out from here to here, 3.5. 1.5 here. So the remaining part from here to here now is 1.5. Placing my tape on the same line again, and I'll mark out 1.5 like this. And I will now connect this one to this one with a curve. And this one goes like this. So sorry, let me extend my line here like this. So remember that this is my allowance. I will now go ahead to cut it. Now that I'm done cutting this, I'm going to use an office pin to pin those two together. I'll pin it together. So now that I've pinned it, I'm going to go ahead to my machine. I'm going to sew it like this, then like this. I sew everything one together. So now that I've sewn it together, I'm going to go ahead to insert my measurement into this. Remember, in the measurement, the waist is 30. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5. So 7.5 plus 1.5 sewing allowance is 9. So I'm inserting 9 on the waist. So this is my 9. The under bust is 31. So 31 by 4 is 7.75 plus 1.5 should be 9.25. So I'm inserting 9.25 here. The bust is 38 on the measurement. So I'm measuring 38 like this. Please watch what I'm doing. I'm going to place my tape here and then go up like this, down to get the whole area of the bust. 38 is 9.5. 9.5 plus 1.5 inch seam allowance is 11. So I'm marking 11 here. So this is 11. I'll now go ahead to connect point 1, this one and this one here like this. But guys, can you see that the bust which is supposed to be the largest came in, maybe because of this cup. It took some in, but I'm not going to leave it like this. I'm going to go straight like this. I didn't go with the line like this. It for me, it's not okay. So it's better it goes like this. Whatever it is that I added here to complete this measurement, to make this measurement go straight, I'll measure it. So this is like 3/4 of an inch. I added 3/4 of an inch to my bust measurement for the front pattern. Is whatever I added here, I'm going to subtract it from the back measurement on the bust area, so that after sewing everything, the measurements still remain the same. Maybe I should just extend my line upwards like this. I want to measure the depth of my neck. So for this, I would want my neck to be 7 inch. On this part upwards, I'm going to be measuring 6.5. But for a larger person, like from bust 42 upwards, you can use 7. So I'm going to be marking 6.5 like this. After marking my 6.5, I'm placing my tape here, -4. This is an off shoulder, -4. Then I'm marking out 7.5 inch. So I'll just connect this like this. So now this becomes the armhole. And for my neck depth, which is a sweetheart, I'm just going to come with it like this. I'm going to come to the waist and put my seam allowance. This seam allowance is just too much for, I'll just put a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'll just go ahead to cut now. Please don't mind this tape. I actually use it to cover my area. The waist is kind of curved, so I'll mark 1 inch here. And then this 1 inch, I'm going to connect it towards the waist to form a curved line. So now I'm going to cut it out. just to give it that curvy, with this I have already determined how it's going to come out, so I'm sure that after I'm done sewing this, it will come out really perfect, exactly the way it is, like this. So for the back, I'm going to give my zip allowance 1.5 inch, connecting it with a point. Already I have minus my 4, so now this is minus 4. I'm marking out 9 inch. This is going to be my bust area at the back, and I'm also marking out 17 inch. This is the waist level at the back. Just like I have the half length for the front, we also have half length for the back. It doesn't go beyond 17. You can use 16 depending on how tall or short you are. So I'll just go ahead to connect and connect this one too. So I'm cutting out this because I've already determined the half length for my back, which is 17. So I don't need this one anymore. So this is what I need for my back. Minus 4, and this is 9 inch. So I'm going to be dividing this by 2, 13 here. So now I'm going to connect it. This becomes the under bust line for the back, and this becomes the waistline for the back, and this is the bust line for the back. So I'll be taking my measurement from the zip towards like this. So for the back, I'm going to be measuring 4.5 straight, and I'm connecting it. So here I'm going to place my tape on this line, and I'll mark out ½ inch, and I will do the same thing to the other side and mark out ½ inch. I'm going to bring the 2 ½ inch to this point to form the dart at the back. So I'll now go ahead to cut. So now after cutting it, I'll go ahead to join this on the machine. So now after joining it, I'll mark this upper part so that I don't get it confused with the down part. So now I'll go ahead to insert my measurement. My waist is 30. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5, then plus 1.5 inch is 9. Remember, I'm taking the measurement from the zip side. So I'm placing my tape here, and I'm marking out 9 inches. So on the under bust is 31 divided by 4 is 7.75. Then plus 1.5 inch is 9.25. So I'm marking my 9.25 here. So for the bust is 38. So 38 divided by 4 is 9.5. So 9.5 plus 1.5 inch is 11. So remember, earlier I told you that the 3/4 inch I added to make my lines for the front pattern correspond, I'm going to be subtracting it from the back. So now I'm going to be subtracting it now. So 11 minus 3/4 inch, it should be 10.25. I'm marking 10.25. So now you can see that nothing was added to the measurement and nothing was removed from the measurement. So after I finish sewing everything, it's going to be perfect. So I'm connecting. I'll now come here. Remember, at the front I used 6.5, but for the back I'm going to be adding 1 to the 6.5 I used. So this is going to be 7.5. So here is minus 4 by 7.5. I want to get my armhole, so I'm connecting it now. So for this armhole, after you might have finished sewing, it can be smaller, so you can now trim your armhole very well, because I'm doing it small here because I don't want to cut an excess armhole yet. For the neck at the back, this is minus 4 already, so I may just go down with just 1.5 inch, that's at 5.5. So please ignore these lines. So after that, I'm now going to measure like 4 inch here for the width of the neck. So I'll just mark it like this, and then connect my neck. So now I think I'm done with everything here. So I'm going to be cutting now. I want to explain something for this back zip side. It depends on your contours. So for me particularly, my back is deep. So because it's deep, I'm going to be dipping this one here. But if your back, if you have a straight back or not so straight, or you can, you just figure it out. But for me, I have to do it so that it can actually bring out my hip at the back. So now I'm going to be minusing like half an inch here. So this half an inch, I'm connecting it here to the bust area. I'll now go ahead to trim it out. Remember that 1.5 was what I used for my zip allowance. So when I'm now fixing my zip at the back, I'm still going to maintain the same 1.5. Even to my waist at the back, I'm still going to maintain that same 1.5. So it's going to go like this. So it's not going to be straight now. It's going to come like this. Back pattern. So this is my back pattern and this is my front pattern. I will now go ahead to, to separate the stitches. Please be careful so that you don't tear it. After separating it, this is how it looks. This is the front pattern and this is the back pattern. So after you have separated it like this, you can now, do your padding. This is the under the bust. So my wording is exactly at my under the bust or a little below the under the bust. So I'm only padding the bust area. I'm going to attach this padding to this fabric. So this is the other side of the front and this is the padding for it, the wording for it. I cut it into the shape, this shape. I'm going to now sew it on it and I'm going to sew the other one to the other side. I'm done attaching the wording to the fabric. I'm just going ahead to sew it like this. Sew this to this side with half an inch and then the other side I'll now sew it with half an inch. I'll also do the same thing to the lining. First of all, I'm going to stay it. Please stay your own. I'll sew it like this. And for the back, I'm sewing it like this, half an inch. And I'll do the same thing to the other side. So this is, after sewing it, this is what I got. This is the front. This is the back. Make sure you press whatsoever you're doing so that your work comes out so well. This, I open up this and I press it. So on this inside, even though I iron it, it's not going to lay, to still budge out. So I'll just apply gum in between. If you don't have gum, don't bother, just top stitch it. It's cheaper. So for the lining, I top stitched it because I don't want to go through the stress of ironing everything. So I had to stop stitch. Remember, I gave it a 1.5 inch, and just measure your 1.5 inch that you use to sew it. So this, knowing the allowance you gave, ease you off from trying to measure your clothes. So I'm going to sew it by 1.5 inch together, everything together. And I'm going to do the same thing to the lining as well. So now I'm done joining the side by side by 1.5 inch, and I also do the same thing to the lining. Now remember, my zip allowance is 1.5 inch. I'm going to insert my zip by 1.5 inch. So now I have inserted my zip. The zip is actually longer than it, so I'm going to just cut it. There is a little excess for the back. So when you're starting your sewing, you start from the waist towards the bust. So now this excess on the armhole, I'm just trimming it off like this. The same excess is also on the other side. So I'm going to also trim it up like this. So now, this is the lining. I'm going to place it on top here. The neck and the neck should align. It's advisable to use your pin to pin it at the neck most especially. This is the lining and this is, sew it 1/2 inch. Don't sew the armhole, sew just the neck and the neck of the back. So after I'm done sewing the neck, I'll go ahead to notch it. Now I'm done notching it, so I'll just go to the machine and top stitch it like this by 1/4 inch down. I'm done top stitching it. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to come to the zip side, but not on the top stitch thread, on the next thread, the seam thread. I'll fold it like this and then sew it. Sew this line on the zip so that it covers up the zip. So now I have sewn it on that side. So this is how it looks like when I turn it. It's now into the, like, already made. I'm going to do a very short sleeve, but then this armhole is so small, so I'm going to go down with the armhole. So I went ahead to mark 1 inch at the front and also 1 inch at the back. Then I now lower it by 1 inch to get a perfect armhole. So I'm going to bring the two armhole together like this and then cut it together so that I achieve the same thing on the both side. So you can pin it so that it doesn't have to displace when you're cutting it. I go ahead to cut it. Remove my pin. Now I have cut my armhole. So I'll do a short sleeve. The length for my sleeve is 6. After I finish sewing it, it will turn to 5. My round sleeve is 12 and 12 divided by 2 is 6, and then plus 1 inch allowance, 7. I'm marking 7 here. Cut it like this. Remember that it's an off shoulder bustier we are sewing and we used -4. I'm marking -4 here and I'm adding 1/2 inch allowance to it. So here I'll come down by 1/2 inch for the seam allowance. I'm going to bring this one, place the armhole here and then trace it. Now that I've traced the armhole into my sleeve, I'm going to now cut it. Now that I have cut it, I'll go to the machine. I'm going to sew like this on the machine. After sewing it straight, I'm going to notch it and then top stitch it. Then I'm going to come over to this one. I'm going to sew 1/2 inch like this, notch it and then top stitch it. Then I'm going to turn it through the armhole. So when I'm done ironing it, I'm folding my sleeve into 2 and then I'm marking out my round arm measurement into it. My round arm is 6, so this is 6. I'm marking it here. So now this is 6, so I'm going to bring it to the armhole like this. So you see it's slanting outwards like this. I'm going to sew like this on this black. I'm going to sew like this. I'm going to do the same thing to the other one. So now I have sewn it. I'm going to start placing my sleeve like this. So as you can see, it will fit in because I use the armhole to measure. And then this is the center, and then I'll bring this one too like this. I'll go and sew it now. Done fixing my sleeve. This is it about cutting an off shoulder bustier cut. And this is how it looks like. So lovely. Let me turn my back. As you can see. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and also don't forget to subscribe. See you in my next video. Bye.